There. Now sound. Good morning. Did that work better? I see sound now. I must have had something crash in the background. That's okay. Hi, everybody. I'm sure you can hear me now. Anyway, yeah, Greg's away. At some sports ball thing. Actually, he's fairly close to Pierre. And I'm sure that, not rock throwing distance, but he's not 6 hours away, put it that way. Today I want to go to a few things, but I kind of wanted to show off a few things in Octoprint and some new things coming to, well, they're not new, but they're things that have come to Octoprint that could make your life better. So I think I'll jump into the Octoprint side first. Now, how many people are using Octoprint here? Just out of curiosity. I think almost all of us do, but it is a curious question. I do. Okay. So, the first change with Octoprint is how you can install it on a Raspberry Pi or similar microcontroller. So like an Orange Pi, you can actually use the official Pi imager. One of the cool things about the Pi, if you don't re-image it all the time, is it can track your stats, right? You can track your print time, you can track current prints, and do some of the features that you could turn off in Marlin that give the board more, that give your controller board more power to do the printing. I'm gonna go to hopefully this one and see if there's sound. So I think there'll be sound. Yes, there is sound. So the first change is this guy here. You no longer have to download, you don't have to go to Google here. So I'll just move this guy. If you go to Octoprint, then you go here and you click the download and setup, or you can do it inside. It tells you, all the stuff it used to. Installing Octoprint, but this has changed. They used to have and host their own image on the website here, and I'm sure if you went to the GitHub you could find it, but they've included it inside of Pi Imager now. So then you can choose what you want. Let's see. Hey, Jared. So they've made it pretty easy, and they've even I'm just gonna close this for a second. They've even told you what to click in the Pi Imager. So they're download Pi Imager on your computer, choose the OS by selecting other specific OS and 3D printing. So here's choose, and then we can go to other specific, and then did I go the right one? No, there's two that say other. That's okay though. There we go. Other specific 3D printing, and then you can see here's all Clipper, Mainsail, Octoprint. It's all here. Pop an SD card in. Pick this. Now, one important thing they do warn you about: once you choose your storage, you can actually configure your SSID and Wi-Fi, but don't change the username that you log into the Pi with. So that's probably the only gotcha in the whole process. If you do that, you're gonna run into problems because all of the permissions are set up for that default user to run the services and the daemons and such, and it won't be able to access them. So that's installing the Pi. There's this other cool thing, and I'll pop it over here. It's not super new. There is instructions on the Raspberry Pi website again, but it's called Octo4A. Hey, Stig. So Octo4A is basically Octoprint, that's running on your Android phone instead. So I wouldn't say run out and use your daily driver for this, because you're gonna have to sacrifice it so it sits here. But if you have a recycled phone or something, older phone, or even an old tablet, you can put Octoprint on it, and then you get the touch screen. And this is beneficial because you don't have to run out and buy those the Pi screens anymore. It just literally has all your touch controls in the display right there now. So it's an easy way to get set up. I mean, Greg and I bought, don't remember where I put it, but we bought those little Pi screens that you can attach your Raspberry Pi to the backup, and then it just sends very similar to this guy here up to your phone. So the advantages to this are you can use your phone's camera if you build a proper case. There's an example in the article. So you can see this person's just like vertically mounted their phone in front so that the camera could see it. Again, probably a recyclable phone would be ideal for this use, because you can't really unattach it and expect to print from it, if you're going to walk away with it. So, and it does run most of the Octoprint plugin repository, which means it can do Clipper and that kind of stuff. So it's out there. It's cool. I have a recycled older Android phone, like 3 or 4 years old now. So I was going to give it a whirl and do a little bit of a tutorial demo thing on it. So that is coming, it's kind of neat. So close this, and then the Octoprint interface. A lot has changed since our last video. One of the things that has changed actually is our plugin support menu. And we used to talk about Octodash, and I think probably you guys have used Octodash. It's an Octoprint dashboard that put little finish and complete widgeties on, and I don't even know if I have it anywhere anymore. Honestly, I think I got rid of the last one last week. So, but Octodash used to be the thing, and then we had another customizer, shall we say, that you could use, and it worked okay. But there's a new plugin called UI Customizer, and it's not super new, just to throw that out there. It's powerful though. So if I wanted to, I'll show you my front screen here, and if we looked at kind of the screen, you'll notice a couple things that, like, my top widgets are different here. So like it's actually changed the control menu, and it moved some of the docs around the web page here so that I could customize if I wanted, like, my files over here, and it's actually very, very easy to do. Now I'm just gonna see, I might have a Pi that is untouched. If I can get, I don't know if it's online or not. It is. Okay. This Pi lives in my garage, so on one of the printers out there. So I don't think I actually updated it, so I can kind of show you the difference. But while that is loading, this interface here is super easy to modify. I don't have to restart the Pi. I don't have to, change a lot of the background UI code and HTML, like if I wanted to change border backgrounds and stuff like that. So if I go into here and go UI Customizer, this is the customizer menu, and you can see there's themes, and the themes are nice. They have a lot of different themes that users have made themselves. You can jump on the GitHub too and make your own and submit it. But the themes will redress Octoprint in, like, the color layout and stuff like that. So I'm just going to show you once I click later on all of these updates here. I'm going to show you what the original layout for Octoprint looks like, just so we have a frame of reference. This is the Pepto-Bismol original, so it does have the custom, like, this is the old way of customizing. So if I were to go down into my plugins, it's called Themify, which doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately, but it'll let you change colors and stuff and edit your HTML code. So and you can see on my home screen here, everything, I have this one big control panel with the little tabs along the top still, and then I have everything else along the side: printer notifications, files, state, connection. I do have the same information up here. It's displayed in a different way because the plugins changed on the top there. So when we look at the other one though, I'm just gonna pop this one back, and let's put this here. You can see that my layout is over here. It's spread out now. I have a centered box with actual information along the outside, which from a UI and a UIX standpoint is actually a better design. But the cool way, or the coolest thing is you can change it on the fly. So here's UI customizer again, and then I can go layout, and you can see here all my tabs are listed here. So if I didn't want to see the connection tab anymore, so that's this one back here, like either my printer's on or off, I don't care. That's silly, you should see this tab, but let's just say I don't want to. I'm just gonna untick the visual thing, and then I can hit save, and then it saves, and it'll tell me you got to hit shift reset sometimes. But yeah, you can see it's gone now. Just took it away, poof. So then I'll bring it back, probably, if I can remember. Plugins, UI customizer, and then I'll just bring it back. So the first time you do it, it does ask you to do a hard cache refresh in your browser. So Shift R, depending on the browser, and there it is again, it's back. So the connection and the state share very similar information, right? Offline printer telling me that the printer's off, there's no serial connection to it. So in reality, I probably don't need the connection tab, but I've had it so long, like that's what was on the other side, so that's why I like it. You can see that the camera over here is pop out now, so it pops in, pops out on that right side. And then all of my other information, I can see like the temperature graphs here, obviously, but it's nice because if I wanted to go to like the G-code viewer while it's printing, or even the terminal to watch the G-code, the temperature shoots up here, and then I don't have to really worry about like flipping back to the temperature tab. So UI customizer, it's a very powerful newish we'll say newer plugin for Octoprint. Make sure that you guys go in and you do an actual like OS update to your Octoprint about once a year. If you leave them long enough, the certificate authorities expire in your Linux build, and then when you try to update like the OS or even to a new Octoprint, it stops trusting repositories, and then you have to like redo it all, which isn't terrible. And remember, Octoprint does give you the ability to actually import and export backups. So if you ever do want to switch Octoprint, you can do a backup and a restore from files. The nice part in here is if you're taking time lapses and stuff, you can leave them out, which it sucks if you want them and you'll leave them in anyway, but it does reduce the time of taking the backup. And then once you have the backup, you can just restore it when you get your new instance running, and then it's back to right where you left it. So like all your print time, all that stuff still exists in there. So that's just kind of like the newer. Octoprint does have some optimizations in the background, but the UI customizer is definitely a game changer. None of this, like this stuff up here, this is actually another add-on plugin temp. So if I were to go here and then I go plugins, this is all of the stuff I have. So I still have most of the stuff I had before. I'm back on Octopod, which I love. I talked about that a while back too. Octopod's an app for the iPhone. It sends push notifications, which is great. So it lets you know like when stuff's up to temperature, halfway done, gives you gentle reminders to check your printer, that kind of stuff. But yeah, so I do have like nav bar temperature in there, which adds those things, but you can see that it's pretty seamless with how it can actually interact with other plugins. Now, when I did install it, there was a few that just didn't work anymore, and it's like, hey, this will conflict. You're gonna have to remove it. But I never lost anything that was of like great value to me, So And this will work on any Octoprint instance. So whether you're Linux, Windows, Pi, phone, whatever, it will work. So that's kind of the new and happening with the Pi, which I know lots of us use it. Like Steak Pi is a great way to control your printer, but there are danger involved if you connect to the internet. It's really easy to find and hack in printers using Octoprint. It is and it isn't, right? Like the downside, and we talked about this before, but the downside of running an Octoprint is there's two ways to access it when you're not home. And one is punching it through your firewall, which can be safe if you do it correctly. If your firewall allows for VPN authentication, that's one way of doing it. So you can get a VPN back to your firewall so those ports are never actually broadcast. You can use weird ports with strict IP access rules. You can add better ACLs, right? You can use the anti-threat engine on your firewall if you have like an ASUS or a higher end firewall. Kick in that actually learns intelligently, like this is a legitimate, request. I'm glad to see that some of the services in the Octoprint have moved behind, like the internal firewall, you could call it, like the camera and the webcam D service are no longer. You just can't like type in the port number and just go, oh wow, that's a camera there, right? So, yeah, and then Shodan does show you quite a few, and I think we talked about that before, but some of the Shodan ones it'll show you, but once you try to access them, it's like, nah, you can't do this, and that's because of, like I said, those better mitigation tools. Lots of corporate environments block country, so like if you're not in the same operating country, there's very, very strict rules as to like, okay, I need this IP address to this source server, right? And so that helps with those things. But talking about that almost feels like I'm at work, so let's not talk about that much longer. But know that the one way, and I've showed it before, you can use other plugins to access your printer securely through API call. So AstroPrint is a great one. You can install AstroPrint, use the AstroPrint console. It's been a while since I've been to the AstroPrint actual web page, but AstroPrint is kind of like built off of Octoprint. You can see they have like their own little dashboard and their stuff here. They do offer a couple free printers when you sign up, and you can basically access your printer anywhere, and you can use this as a plugin to Octoprint. So you can use the AstroPrint to do simple function like monitor your print, stop the print, that kind of stuff, without having to like get into your routing, which that can be more comfortable for people for sure. But let's just check out their plans and pricing, because now, so they still have the free. So the free is for 2 printers, 1 user. You get a little bit of storage. Honestly, the file storage isn't a huge deal in there, because once you've finished, like if you're slicing in AstroPrint, which you can do, you can slice from the cloud in AstroPrint, and we went through that as well. Then it stores all those files and you get up to 1 gig. That's a lot of slicing, and then you could be deleting stuff. And then you can see here that they have a premium $10 a month US plan, 5, and then you get 5 printers, which ironically that wouldn't even apply to me anymore. So I'd have to go to get or pay the $5, right? $5 a printer after that. So, but that way, if you use a service like this, you're back and forth to the cloud, and it's great. It's it lets you use your printer without having to worry about the networking security side of things, without having to really worry about poking holes in your firewall and that kind of stuff. When you do get your Octoprint set up, on the setup screen, don't skip the username and password for the UI, right? I'm not talking about changing the Raspberry Pi password. I'm talking about logging into the actual interface. You want a username and password. So in the setup wizard, make sure you connect a username and password, and then you will be happy. So that's kind of the Octoprint portion. I know we use it, but I just wanted to show you the new things, and we'll probably do a quick video. I might cut this one up into the video, maybe, who knows. But yeah, take that with it and use it. It's again, that UI customizer is a great feature in there. So now next on the docket is Marlin. And we talked about how like the last version released a few weeks ago, and it's great. It works really good. But there are some gotchas. So I want to go through Marlin. So if you go to Marlin, I have OCD. I get twitchy if I check my mail while I'm my printers. Right. I love it. Yeah, Dominic gets email alerts when his printer's on, I would imagine. Love it. So we're just going to go over it. Fired the Marlin download. Wow, I talk good today. So the download's right here. If you wanted the configuration examples, which we're going to use, I'm going to click view and download here, and then it'll take us to the GitHub, and then I can grab it if I wish to. Right there, download zip. So that hasn't changed. They brought them out a while back to save the download space, so that's why that exists. And then so we've got both of our files. The other thing that I'm going to start with, and I'll show you here, is the old config for my printer. So like I have this old Ender 3 config here, and then I'll show you kind of what we're going to do. But so the first things first is we're going to unpack all of these zips. So let's just extract. It's showing on the other screen there. It's actually going. So I want to kind of show you a few things along the way here, basically for troubleshooting your build. Now, I know Stig pushes his printer faster, as we've had conversations in the past, so he probably has different acceleration settings inside his config than even like the default ones on the Enders would do. Now we just use Ender 3 as an example, basically because it's more mainstream. But once that's unpacked, it'll be great. Thank you for unpacking. So we'll just call this this one O for old. And then I'm going to take the actual Marlin file, and then I'm just going to delete that one. Boom. Get out of here. And then I have my old one, and then I have the configs. So the configs I leave zipped. So I'll always unzip my actual branch, and then I'll leave my config example zipped, and then we can come in here and just keep following the top folder down, right? So config examples, and then you get to your brands. Now remember, if your brand isn't listed in here, pick something close, right? So like let's say you're running like before, when the legends and those things weren't in here from Big Tree Tech, like Big Q, that's not a problem. You could have picked Reality, and then you could pick Ender 3, and it's the same size. So we're going to come in here for Ender 3 now. Let's say most of us run Ender 3 specials, meaning like you don't actually have the original controller, or you've modified the size, that kind of stuff. So if we come in here, and this is the original frame that mine was built off of, it wasn't Ender 3 Pro. So I can come to Ender 3 Pro, but look at all these examples now, and they keep adding more. It's great. So they have, so for Stig, our friend Stig, they do have the SKR minis in there, right? They have the Turbo 1.4 in there as well, and then they do have the Creality boards. So like you have a really good starting point inside of that Ender 3. Now, if you go into the Ender 3 one, you get even more. And as we know, and we talked about it, I think it was last week, but the biggest change was the 4040 on the Y and the power supply. So you can come in here now and you can see like, oh, well, I have way more boards yet, right? So there's, I don't know, double the Big Tree Tech boards. and then we have more like Sci Tech Cheetah, which Greg has a couple of those, MKS, which we don't actually have anymore in our collections, and I have yet to actually try the Easy Light board. I think, Dom, aren't you using an Easy Light? Anyway, let's go back to Pro, and we're gonna go and we'll grab this one. So my printer that is behind me that we're going to be using as an example is actually a 1.3, so it's not a turbo, but we will fix that as we go because we can edit it quickly enough, and that's kind of the point. So I have all of these example files: the boot screen, the status screen, config, and config advanced. If you don't want your screen to have a pretty picture or use that stuff, don't worry about the boot screen and the status screen. However, they're fun and you should use them. So in the downloads, we go into our Marlin new download folder that we just unpacked. We go into Marlin, and you can see here that there's a configuration H and an advanced, and so I have those in here. So what I'm going to do is I'll copy the examples right over. Bop. And then we'll do a replace files in destinations. And so now you can see like the boot and the status are all in the same place. We have a config ini, and if we go back into the default Marlin folder, so I'm just go Marlin 2.1, you can see that we do have the platform IO ini. Whoop. But it's set to default as it always is at the 2560, so that's fine too. Now, as we go through, we're going to install VS Code, but I need to take a brief break, so give me 3.5 minutes or 2 minutes or something. I don't know. I'll be right back. Enjoy the starting screen. I'll be right back. Hey, sorry. Yeah, the music, right? The music is the so chill. You can just get down with it. I am back, obviously. Just making sure the audio works. And I'm going to catch up on comments. Let's see here. Yes, I use easy board. Yep, coffee time. My Pi keeps losing Wi-Fi connection with my PC. I wonder about connecting with the Ethernet cables. So, Melton, yeah, the Ethernet cable is the best. The Raspberry Pi, depending on the version, I find the Pi 4 connects to the Wi-Fi pretty good. Pi 3s are okay. And if you're noticing that like it's flopping off and on of the internet, I guess the technical term would be flapping off and on the Wi-Fi, the Ethernet will just fix that right up. You won't have any problems after plugging it into Ethernet cables. Yeah, Pi 3B plus. I guess it depends how far your router is too, like, and what surfaces it's going through. So all mine are Wi-Fi now, but the router's only about 7 feet from them. So before that, I did have 6 Ethernet cables on a separate router or switch, whichever you prefer, to actually manage those connections for me. And in general, like, this is just a general statement, a wire is always better than the Wi-Fi. Now, I would say that stands for now too, right? Because we're getting into the territory of Wi-Fi 6E and 6, where your download speeds can hypothetically be double that of a normal cat cable. But in your specific case, the wire will fix that flapping problem. The other thing that can help too is statically assigning IP addresses in the router, because sometimes the problem is actually the DHCP server is trying to reassign addresses when it knows it shouldn't, and then it just causes that intermittent failure on a Pi. So the music needs ocean sounds. Yeah, I really like this about music, guys. It's I put the link in the video description for it, but it's like called Lofi Girl. It's like just a streaming lo-fi. That's why it's called lo-fi tunes. It's pretty sweet. But yeah, I hope that helps with that question. Let me know if it doesn't. You can reach out to us. I think what is it? info@3dmakeit.ca. I did it. Now, I've been remiss, so I'm going to do a few things. One of those things is this thing. Thank you so much for being Patreon supporters. Ouch at the top there, Tree Supports, but everybody else, you're super important to us. You let us do what we do, and we greatly appreciate it. And without you, the channel's fingers, so to speak, couldn't reach out, and we probably wouldn't be able to do as much as we do. So thank you so much for being Patreon supporters. We truly appreciate you. And if you are interested in becoming a Patreon, you can get access to our Discord server, which we hang out at. We share pictures, and I promise I'm going to be on there more now. Patreon.com/3dmakeit. So thank you again for being on that list. Now, if you want to find us too, on all of our little things, you can go to 3dmakeit.ca, and that'll get us too. But hopefully that helps with the pack question. But I find that wiring them, if you're farther than about 7 feet, is always a good idea. So let's go back to the screen. So I've moved my config in. I've downloaded all the files I need. I have my old one in case we need it. The gotcha here, let's say gotcha with the old files, is the older they get, the more different they are. So you'll have more and more scrolling and kind of searching till to be like, oh, that's the part. And I'll show you that in a second here. But next thing is we need VS Code, which I freshly uninstalled for these purposes. So we can install VS Code under users. So if you double click it, and you open it, that's the default setting. It says user. That's perfectly fine. And so we'll just hit next. And then if you wanted to change the install path, that's up to you. But I just click next. I do like to do these, add open and add open with code in the right click menu. So like if you right click a file, that's going to actually let you open it in VS Code. So you can just really quickly pop something open and use it. The path is nice as well because you can run it without actually declaring the path, like your full path inside of the command prompt. You just can type VS Code and it'll run no matter where you are. So that's nice too. So I usually check those ones. I don't like desktop icons. Like Dominic, my OCD can't handle desktop icons because they would just overrun my life and I would be sad. So all that said and done, let's hit install. We'll wait a second. Here it goes. So well, this is going, expect a new video Friday this week. It will launch around 3 and it will be on kind of like the new methods on the Pi like we talked about first. And then next week we'll have a new video kind of going through these steps and getting Marlin 2.1.2 going. Let's see here. And I will click finish. I don't need to launch it, but I'm going to because we're going to launch. So I think you've all seen VS Code. The editor could not be opened because the file was not found. No, that's fine. So I had it installed before, and what happened is it remembered this file, and it's like I don't know where it is, which ironically enough is the WPA supplicant file for the Raspberry Pi to join it to the wireless. So on a fresh version of VS Code, we need to do a few things, but you can see here firstly that it says VS Code restricted mode is intended for safe code browsing. Trust this window to enable all features, right? So then I can go manage, and then you can go in here and you go trust. And then, now this workspace is trusted. So what that does is it lets you actually do more for read write. You can avoid restricted mode too. So you can do what we just did to get around it, or you can launch it as administrator. So the right click, run as admin. You want to be careful doing that particular method though, because running VS Code, which is a powerful editor with lots of plugins, you want to be sure that you're installing trusted plugins because they could do whatever they want to your computer. So the next thing we're going to do is I'll close that. We'll go down here and you can see we don't have any installed. See, none. All of these are to be installed. So we need platform IO. So let's just type in platform, and there's platform IO, and then we can grab it. There's you can install the release version by just clicking install or the arrow and click release, or you can do the beta version, which is the pre-release. I would always stick with the main version in our case. Not that I am against using things like in my normal regular life, I'm very much like bleeding edge. I want the newest OS and all that stuff. The progress actually is behind my head. Let's see here. Can I move my face? Yeah, there's the progress bar right there. So it'll run through and it'll install, and then generally speaking it says reboot VS Code. So that's what we're going to do, and then we're very, very close to getting like a compile off. So now the reason you want to bring your old config with you is really comparison, right? So if you're not sure of a setting, so for example, like if you like an acceleration setting that's higher than normal, or you set your stepper driver current rate to like, let's say a little higher than normal, and you want to remember those settings. Another big one is the BL touch, because in theory you would have programmed your offsets into the firmware, and that way you would have a good working knowledge of what those were. So I'm just going to move my head up a little bit here again. Boop, maybe, nope. Come on, there you go. So the reload now button, because it's finished, popped up, so we'll hit it. hit it, and you can see it just literally did an internal reload. It's almost like a refresh. And so now that's installed. So I've installed C extensions by default. Okay, you guys watched. I did not install that, and there was nothing installed before, right? And then Platform IO is there, and so then it looks like the other part went away, but you can actually bring stuff back by shrinking or searching, right? So you could search for other tools. Now I'm not going to install auto build right now. I'll show you in a second. So the first thing that you do, and this is going to be a little bit counterintuitive, but I kind of do it this way. Whoops, that's the Windows store. I wanted my file explorer back. There we go. Is I'm going to take, so this is just our downloads folder. And what we're going to do is we're going to open Marlin, and then we're going to open Marlin. So I followed the breadcrumbs from 2.1 down to the Marlin folder. And then I just pop in the config, sorry. And then I go, yes, I trust it, open it. Only do that on stuff you're working on. If it pops up and you're not actually working on something, don't give it permission. So this is my path. It works pretty good. I just wanted to go through and show you how like default it was, especially at the top. So like this one's just Creality Turbo, yada yada yada, right? So we know that it's not our complete end build yet, because although we did get the config examples from this directory, we're not actually going to use that file, right? And then here's the author string, which is the person who made the file in the fork, basically. Okay, so I'll close that. We're going to go open folder, and we're going to actually just pick the downloads folder, and then we're going to go open. And then I click yes, because you can see like it brought everything in here. So everything is actually like showing up on the side now. Now only things that are text or text adjacent, so like any files and that kind of stuff, will open. So I'm going to take my SKRE3 zip here, and I'm just going to pop it there. Now this is the original config I have. So now you can see I got both of them open on the side there, or visible. I shouldn't say open. They're visible on the left side. Sorry, up here. And then once that finishes in like 4 hours, come on Windows, jeez, we're gonna actually just compare the old one to the new one. And we use VS Code to do that. So I'm curious. Yeah, yes, yes, Pierre, you can, and that's what we're going to do. I'm curious as to how many people are using VS Code to do this, or like or VS Codium is another one. Very similar, but it's a true open source fork. Even though this one's open source, they're like, we're more open source. And there's actually a few other ones, and you can use Visual Studio if you really wanted. But I'm just curious if you guys are using VS Code or not. Okay, so the reason why we bring the folder in is exactly that. So I'm going to open both of the Marlin threads, and then I have to open Marlin and Marlin. So you do get kind of out of room here very quickly, right? So the top one, so this one up here is my old one. I'm going to click on my config.h. And then on the bottom one, I'll click on my config.h while holding control. So they're both selected, and then I can do a compare selected. And so once you right click and click that compare selected, you can see that one's 2.7.2. And this one, let's hover. It opened the same one twice. Sometimes it hates us. So let's just do that again. Now you can open side by side as well. Yeah, that's better. So you can see, I just hover over, and you can see here that like on the breadcrumb trails, it shows you the full folder path and what you're comparing. So like mine has like this user DJ horror, and then it says 2.72, and then there's the little arrow in the middle after the config, and it shows you the other ones, and which is the 2.1.2. So this way you can compare them and use them. And yes, Ray, I know Clipper is the future, and after the Marlin video, I'm going to do a Clipper one. I'm joining the future. Greg already uses some Clipper at his place. I'm going to use it here on a couple printers starting, in February there. So expect a Clipper video after this stuff. But Marlin has its nuances and advantages, so let's not discount it totally yet. Marlin's great, and it's been great for so many years, and I think that it will only get better as time goes by. Clipper isn't bad. Like I've used Clipper in the past on other things. It's just that we haven't done any formal videos or anything on it. It's easier to configure, but it's also a shift in the way you configure. So, but you can configure more on the fly than just like on Marlin. There's the EEPROM settings, and those are what you get to configure on the fly, which is a lot of stuff, but Clipper gives you a little bit more. So this is the compare window. So we were just talking about that side by side. So you can see on the right hand side here, if you're ever wondering, you can look at the version number to start with. Hey Gary, and this one is the newest one, 2.0.1.2. This one's the oldest one, and because it's the 2.7. Okay, so we got new and we got old. Now you can edit new and old while you were working, basically. So like if, let's say, I don't need this line about the configure, right? I don't really care. So I'll just delete it. And as soon as I do, you can see that this side now matches this side, right? And so I can go through and like I can quickly look at what's highlighted and go, okay, something wrong. And lots of it is preamble. So you'll find out as you go through, like lots of it is just like for example, like see this one, all of the spaces and stuff that they added on this side, on the new one compared to the old one. And that's kind of what we're getting at. So we can keep scrolling. This section's missing. So whenever you see this gray blotchy slashes, that just means that like this section doesn't match any section here. So we're just going to make it a space holder. That's the word I'm looking for, space holder, right? And so then we get here, and I usually like to do, so if I do this, I usually just use my name and I'll just paste it over because that's not what it's going to be anymore. So Ender 3 Pro, whatever you want. You can name whatever name you put here will show up in your printer status too. So if you wanted to name it something funny, go ahead. You can see that show boot screen, everything looks same there. And then all of a sudden I get here and it's like, hey, the defined motherboard part's missing. Well, it's not. It's just further down in this config. And it's further up in this config. So you can see here that this defined motherboard is for a 1.4 turbo, but we're using a 1.3. So what we can do is we can go into the new file, and we'll go into the library, I do believe, or is it source? No, source. And then we can go into core files and boards, and then we can just open it to the side and it'll open up beside for now. And then what we want is a SKR. So I just did a search for SKR, and then we want the 1.3. So, we'll copy and paste. And then if I go here and just go to the end of the line and paste, that will change that, and I can close my boards, and then here we are again. So now I have the right SKR 1.3 board in there. The serial ports shouldn't have changed. Okay, so you should have -1. And then you can see I have defined serial port on my other side here. So this is, remember the left side's the old side. So I have -1, or the serial port to a 0 here. But if I keep scrolling down, like it looks like it's missing, but it's right here. So that's where it gets tricky. As you get newer versions, the developers will change where certain things are, because logically speaking, they make more sense to put in another section. Baud rate is one that's personal sometimes. The higher the number, the faster the file transfer. When you're looking at the SD, it says right there too, with SD file transfers. I like 250,000 personally. It lets me do all the SSH tricks like uploading files and stuff like we talked about in a couple years back. But that's kind of like what we do. So we go back and forth, and you can see here that here's the motherboard section here, but we actually did it up there. And you can see here too that define changed a little bit. Let's just double check that because it shouldn't have changed that much. We're just going to open to the side again and make sure I copied it right. Yeah. So you want to make sure that you just leave that motherboard in there, I do think. Let's just go here. And if we do that, yeah. So leave the word motherboard. Actually, I'm going to take it out. I'll show you why. There. So we'll just take out the word motherboard and we'll keep going. You're like, but it's gonna be broken. It will be broken. So at this point, like I've changed enough. I have 2208s in mind, so I'll just pop those back. And again, you can see that the driver section is a little out of order in the new file from what the old one was, because it's just like blonk, this big thing, right? If I wanted to define my custom name aside from whatever, which I kind of like to call this printer doc because they're all 7 dwarfs. So there. And then this. So I've changed all my drivers to 2208s, and then you can see here that there's some other driver options underneath. We don't need to worry about these right now. And then you can see we're in the extruder section, so everything is really the same here. As you scroll down, lots of this will be done for you in the example file because it's so similar. Usually your custom firmware, as custom as you try to make it, eventually just matches the example file because they are relatively close machines to everyone. So as we go down, there's PSU controls, there's thermistors. All of this is okay. The one thing we do want to address, so you can see here, I'll just point it out, that there's more sensor options in the new version than the old version. It's normal, it happens that way. So 2525 redundant temperature, sensor diff, this is all fine. All of it is fine. The temperature probes are usually set up correctly. If you've changed to a high temp thermistor or a non-stock thermistor, you will have to set it in that one section up here, right? So it tells you here's all the thermistors that you could possibly have, and then it says pick the right number here, and now no. So number 1 isn't on or off, like it's not a, that's not a Boolean number, that's actually this number up here. So like if you have a different, like let's say you have like I don't know, the RPM ultra hot end, well then they use this 512 number, and that's what you would put right here, 512. So that's where those numbers come from. And then you have like heat bed temperature min max. This one's again personal. Like if you print a lot of PETG, this is usually just fine, or a PLA. But remember that PLA, if you're just printing PLA on a Bowden tube, you might want to drop this down to say like 235, because one, you're going to make sure you're not going to burn out your PTFE as quickly. And then you'll stay inside those safe operating temperatures. If you're printing PETG, then you're probably going to need to bump it up. And then as we scroll down, everything else is the same. It's fine. It's the same. You'll hear me say that a lot because it really is. PID on the bed is a good thing, unless you're using like a high wattage bed. So like a large bed. So picture like, you know, like a 400 by 400 millimeter bed. If you do that, you might run into issues with the breaker in your house, just because of how fast the PID switching happens. It can flicker lights and trip breakers on power bars and stuff. So on like smaller printers like CR10 and lower, it's a really great thing. On bigger printers, give it a try. But if you notice something funky happening, in the lights in the room when you're printing, maybe don't do it. So you just have to define enable, and that's it. It's on. I don't. So on this controller, I don't use any chamber settings. On the one that we did with the E3 Turbo, we did, and we showed that when we configured that one. Prevent cold extrusion. You can see that they added it to 180. That's a little conservative, I guess. The extrude length is 400, so that's the maximum amount of filament it'll feed out before it'll just stop feeding. And this is while you're printing too. However, the printer sends reset codes for every layer it finishes, so you'll actually never hit that limit. So this is really just like a physical continuous extrusion, so that's fine. See, it's fine. So this is all the delta stuff. So this is where you can change your core XY. You don't need to do any of this for like a ender, but if you like, I have a core XY, so if I was doing my SX4, I'd have to come here and bop that one out. Okay, it's all fine. Homing is good. You can see that I have like my XYZ plugins here. That's fine. And then this is also fine. I say that a lot, don't I? This is fine. It's true, it is fine. Again, new settings here, but we don't need to worry about it. You can see there's IJK UVW. And anybody know why? I know you guys know why. Why is there so many steppers listed here? You guys know the answer. I'll give you time. Somebody knows the answer. And so here we have our default steps per unit. And you can see here that in my original config and on my original Ender 3, we do have 95 as that last value. This one has 141. That could be explained by a couple of things. So voltage tuning on the stepper could cause that if the person who made the new config. Yeah, Stig's got it. So like picture the Octoprint board or the Octopus board or the other one from F-Sci-Tech that I can't remember the name of. But the more stepper drivers, that's why they have more letters. So you can see like even between 1 and 2.707 and now 2.1.2, like we've just added, I think there was about 6 more. So this one, you can tune this last value. In fact, generally speaking, when you do the firmware, I like to set it to original, but the fact of the matter is currently on my printer that if I were to put this on, it's actually at like 425.7. So that's the real number. Now, just back to the driver names for a second there. We've seen lots more driver names in complex CNC machines for a while, but Marlin just adds them as these boards start getting more and more drivers. So feed rates, again, you can see that my feed rate on the so it's X, Y, Z, and then extruder. And then if you have more extruders, there's more numbers here, right? So like on my Z, I have it set at 5. On his it's 10. That's negligible, so I'll keep it. The Z, as we all know, moves up like once every layer, right? So you don't need incredibly fast feed rates and that kind of stuff. So that's okay. This one is okay. This is the section I think that Stig might modify. And it's the acceleration. So this is actually where you can get to printing faster. So if you wanted your printer to move faster, this is the section you would go to. Remember these values and then put them in your slicer as well to maximize your efficiency there. So the default acceleration at 500 is actually a little slow for an Ender. An Ender could probably push about 1200 or 1000. And then the default retraction acceleration should probably be about 800. So they're pretty close, but we could go like, add those in. You'll note that the biggest difference it's complaining about between the two is the space. Like it just hates that space. And then that one will just be different because it's a different number now. And so will this one. And then you can see the travel is 2000. So now it'll actually move in back and forth. So I'm going to hit save. Let's pretend we finished. I'm just going to do a filament runout sensor as well. And in the config file, the default config, it does actually use the, oh goodness, I think it's the X min pin that you're not using right now. And then we want the direction as well. So I'm going to leave the auto bed leveling off at the moment, but I will check my directions here quick. Come on. Use min. There you go. There we go. So I just want to make sure that my directions match because the example config had 2209s in it and I used 2208, so you can just come here and make sure that everything's looking okay. So it's true, 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 false, false, true, false, false, false. So that looks fine. So I'll hit save. Now the nice part is as we've been going along, we've been saving, we can close this, and then what we'll do is we'll shrink these guys down and we'll actually dump this folder completely. Or we'll start a new. So let's just start a new editor. So we'll go platform IO. We're gonna go open, and then we can open our project. That's the words I'm looking for. So here we go, open project. Now I didn't use import, I just used open. So open a project. We know that the project is in our downloads folder. And we want this one. Remember, always being the one that has the platform ini to open the project. And then it pops open. You can see it built a new workspace too, so all that other stuff is gone. And like I don't even have like another VS Code window, which is fine because I closed everything. Stig says I print Petchy at 150 with a 1K acceleration and I'm not pushing the printer. Yeah, and you know what? That's a good point. Good point. So we don't need to open the ini per se, but we will open the config. So we'll open Marlin and then we'll go into our config. Now there's other things that we could do. We didn't, but there's other things we could do. Can you guys hear me? Looks like the bitrate's getting back up there. Yeah, like I'm... Okay. It says I have bitrate again. Can you guys hear me now? Is it like okay-ish? Maybe? No, I'm losing bitrate. No. Yeah, glitches are great. Please hold, your call is important to us. All right. I don't know if you guys can hear me or not. I don't know if you can hear me. Okay. Here's what I'm going to do. We're going to save this example. We'll continue on with it. after, but we're just at the point where we're going to build, which is a bummer. But we shall save it for after. And if you can hear me, I'll say goodbye here. If you can, I'm typing goodbye in the chat. So either way, we'll round up. And I will finish this example maybe midweek or something. We'll jump on into a stream, and then like I said, we'll make a quick Octoprint update video for 2023, and we'll do one for Marlin, and then we'll do one for Clipper, and configuring all of them for an example printer of some sort. So, yes, if you're still here and can you hear me, you're awesome. Thanks for coming. And I am just typing goodbye. All right.